The mayor is on the phone.
The mayor's on the phone.
Yes, so I think it's 7.
Okay, it is 7. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming to tonight's Borough Council meeting for the budget workshop meeting. We have a lot of guests here tonight, so we'll call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock PM. And let's rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please.
Miss Demi,
Here.
Miss House,
Here.
Mr. Panza,
Here.
Mr. Ray,
Here.
Miss Schwartz,
Here.
Miss Barron,
Here.
Mayor Shank.
Present by phone.
We are all here, and we can begin with hearing of the citizen. Anyone wishing to address agenda items, so the budget, and items on the budget will be heard at this time. You do need to come up here to this podium. State your name and your address.
Recording in progress.
Aldo Art Pilati, 143 Sheldon Avenue, 15220. I think it would be nice, if the guests that you mentioned that are here tonight would be introduced. For everyone, of course, I know the acting chief is, that's obvious, he's wearing a uniform, but the rest of the folks, I have a library person is here, but it would be good to, introduce everyone who is here. And you can do that after I'm done talking, I suppose, if you'd like. So that's one thing. Also, it's a little bit difficult to talk about the budget just based on what is presented in the materials without hearing any presentations first. But here goes. First of all, I think regarding the proposed property tax increase, that the property taxes should be kept, increases should be kept to a minimum, or the proposal for the increase should be eliminated. I think it's obvious we're all in an affordability crisis right now. Economically, all you need to do is look on the internet or watch television. So the borough residents are facing higher costs, grocery expenses, so on and so forth. So right now we're in an affordability crisis. I don't know if right now is a good time to be raising property taxes. Secondly, of course, there's a possibility and discussion about potential reassessments happening in the county. And if that would happen, that of course would affect all the taxes that would be paid, both borough taxes, school taxes, county taxes, things like that, county real estate taxes, that is. So, so that also would make the rather small proposed, tax estimate that everyone would have to pay be much larger. So there's that issue as well. And I think some of the proposed items could be eliminated. For instance, I noticed, there's talk about replacing the carpeting in like this room and some of the other rooms here. Also replacing carpeting and repainting the library and things like that, and putting a vestibule at some point on the Carlisle Social Hall, the Fire Hall. I think expenses like that, at times like these, especially given the affordability crisis, aren't necessary. And also, there's the possibility that the bridge may not be as fully funded as we might expect. I think we have a very rosy estimate as to what the borough's contribution would be toward the bridge. And also, the bid has not come in yet for the swimming pool project. So we don't even know how much that's going to cost. And so given that, also street improvements, I think the borough at times has worked on streets that are perfectly fine. And, I think some money could be saved by cutting back some road improvement projects. I obviously live on Sheldon Avenue, as I said, that would not be a street that I would recommend, be eliminated from any paving. But, because the first half of Shelton Avenue is, in a very poor, if not disgraceful condition at this time. But there's dead-end streets off Sheldon Avenue, that could be very easily eliminated. There's also a proposal to replace, or repave, like the Green Tree, parking lots. When I'm over there from time to time, they look perfectly fine to me. So things like that could be done perhaps and eliminate, the possibility of any property tax increase. I also assume, that you'll tell us when the vote would be on a proposed property tax increase. I assume that would be sometime in December, so like the meeting date, for when that might be would be helpful as well. And so those are just some of my concerns, about this. I look forward, to hearing, what goes on at this meeting. It's a little bit different to speak, from this perspective. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll move on to the presentation of the 2026 budget.
I'm gonna disconnect this first.
Yeah, if we move that one, I think we'll be fine. And then if we can have everyone who is here introduce themselves, tell us what department that you represent. And then we can move on with the presentation.
Maybe just.
I'll just bring it. I'll bring it to it.
Chad Rannigan, Police Department. Don Gillum, Braintree Fire Company. Barry Roner, Public Works.
Dana Trey, Library. Babette Legler, Finance. Jen Mathy, Recreation.
Jason Stanton, Engineering.
Diane Judy Miller, the Borough Manager. And I apologize, you'll need to pass this along as you ask questions.
That's fine. I'll turn it off until someone,
So just the bottom,
yeah, just the
look at
bottom.
the thing, it'll show red. And then when you're ready to talk again, you press it again, it'll turn green.
Ta-da.
So we take turns on each side.
Okay, this, I guess everybody can hear me okay? So everybody, welcome to the 2026 preliminary budget presentation. Cat's out of the bag that there is a recommended millage increase, but I hope that once we walk through this budget, everybody will have an understanding as to why it's recommended and have a greater sense of comfort with it. So I'm just going to walk down through initially all of the funds that are summarized in the preliminary budget message. And then we will move into each of the individual funds, general fund first, storm, sanitary, capital, and then some of the other funds that are not as active, if you will. So I apologize, I'm on some super thirsty today.
I have a question. We're gonna ask questions after the presentation.
I don't necessarily mind if you want to ask questions during. Like if I say something that's not clear, doesn't
I
bother
think
me.
it would probably be best if we ask it in that section.
Right, okay. Okay, so the general fund budget, or the total borough budget is presented. All of the funds are balanced. Some of them through transfers from other funds in order to get them balanced. The budget does include a $500,000 increase, which for the average homeowner, average assessed home at $150,000, that equates to about a $75 a year tax increase. So nobody likes for taxes to go up, but I hope that, again, through the presentation of this budget, that the residents will find that, what they're getting for that additional $75,000 is worth it. Okay, so in the budget is the general fund, the capital fund, the storm sewer fund, a bond fund, highway aid fund, also known as liquid fuels, the pension fund, the healthcare fund, real estate tax escrow fund, the Green Tree Cemetery Fund, drug enforcement fund, revenue fund, fire company apparatus fund, and the insurance dividend fund. And then lastly, the sewer fund. So just starting with the general fund, 82% of those revenues are made up by real estate taxes and then the 511 taxes. Act 511 taxes include business privilege tax, earned income tax, the local services tax. So that makes up, as you can see from the pie chart, the lion's share, about 82% of the revenue that comes into the borough on an annual basis. There are some smaller revenues that come in, but as you can see again from the pie chart, none of which are, significant or impactful. Let's see. So of these other, the general fund, what we have done this year in order to accommodate some of the expenditures is we transfer in from our unrestricted reserve funds. And this year, and I'll get to that when I get to more of the specifics in the general fund, but it did require a transfer this year, which is not unusual. We typically always do that because the general fund gets balanced out every year. Fund balances are not carried in the general fund like some budgets do. The general fund expenses, the revenues are going to remain relatively flat. There's really nothing to cause any spikes in the revenue. So as you will see from the numbers within that section, there's nothing really remarkable. The expenses went up by about $435,000, and that's primarily due to salary and benefit increases, much of which are contractual. So we're just kind of abiding by the contracts that we have in place. Some of the other more significant increases are a $70,000 increase in our waste management contract with Waste Management. That's for refuse and recycling collection. And then I've also recommended an increase to library funding. And we'll get into that here in just a little bit. And we also have Dana Trey, our library director, is going to address council about some of the benefits that the library brings.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So my first question is in regards to, it looks like an inconsistency between the budget message and the real estate and property taxes. So in the budget message, you say that the half mil increase will generate 276,750, and then on line 301 and 100, it's showing 328, 383.
I think, Babette, you. There's that chart. Show all that. There's only that. It was on the drive I gave her. The millage chart. Yes. Okay. So no, but Dave is correct. The millage chart does generate 276, 750. But I think, Dave, that might be because it's including. Pardon? His budget last year was budgeted. Did you get that, Dave?
Yeah.
The budget last year wasn't correct. It was low. It was budgeted low, I think is the point that she's trying to make.
We thought a lot of appeals were gonna come through last year, and a lot of those appeals did not win.
So typically what the process for setting
So
the,
wouldn't, in the budget message, shouldn't that be 328, 383?
The difference between the budget by budget and she's saying that it was budgeted low in 2025. Compared to the project 2025 projected is higher by about 25,000.
So that would need to generate 328, 383.
no, We don't, no.
Okay.
No. But the $500,000 increase does in fact generate $276,750 based on our millage assessment, or I'm sorry, our total borough-wide assessment.
It was low last year and we have to make up for it this year. Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
No.
No, because she zeroes out the budget at the end of each year. We start over.
We budgeted lower thinking we were going to get less, what they're saying, for 2025. And those appeals did not hit, so we got more than, is that right?
And the budgeted amount would be based on the community-wide real estate assessment multiplied by the proposed millage.
I'm sorry, Ron Panza, councilperson. So you're saying, so we've got more than expected. So that's why you wanna have a tax increase, because we've got more?
No,
Usually, like if you get less, then you need a tax. increase.
hopefully when I work through the rest of the budget, we start talking about expenses and expenses of the other funds, it will make sense.
And I'm sure the next question someone was going to ask was, what was the $70,000 increase of the, waste management contract that was under contract?
It's the annual built-in increase.
Okay, so we knew,
Yes,
that's not a surprise.
yeah,
Okay.
every year it goes
That's
up.
okay.
Did you have another question, Dave?
No,
Okay.
I'm not sure if I completely understand that answer, but
And-
I don't want to take.
Yeah, but if you want to call in, we can walk through it with you.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so again, a lot of the expenses in the general fund are, you know, just the operating expenses, the day-to-day to get through the borough. And I'll get into a little bit more detail on that when we actually get to the general fund, revenues and expenses. But just from a high level view, there is an increase recommended for the library, for Wilson Pool next year. Obviously, we're out to bid on that project, but should council not receive a quote that they find acceptable, and we do not go through with that project, or if we go through that project and they're able to start later in the year, we have all the expenses budgeted so that the pool is able to be open next year, if that's the path that we travel. And then everything else is budgeted as normally would be, all the services, the refuse collection, the street sweeping, the annual electronics recycling, all of those things are going to stay for 2026. The capital fund finances all of the major infrastructure and vehicle purchases for the borough. So that, and all of the revenues from the general fund are either, or the capital fund are either transferred from the general fund, transferred from other unrestricted reserve funds, or occasionally grants. So that's the funding for the capital fund. And obviously significant expenditures in that program are the road paving program. Portions of the swimming pool will be budgeted out of there, reconstruction, the sidewalk program, and some vehicle and other miscellaneous equipment purchases.
Judy, for the general fund, in the message, it says will increase by 435,000. That's the total amount that it will increase.
Yes.
So that's the difference between 2025 budget and 2026 budget.
Was it that, but did you go off of actual, projected actual?
That's in your budget.
Yeah, but I'm saying from the general fund, I can't remember, couldn't remember if you did it off of projected actual or budget. I believe it's off of budget, Dave.
So off of budget, it says 426.
Budget.
426. Potentially I have a typo there. Yeah, but primarily those increases are simply wage, salary, and then some light operating expenses.
Okay, and then how much are we using from the general fund revenues to balance the budget?
Transfer, you mean the transfer?
The
in?
transfer to balance. So.
It's on page 30. 284,993.
Do you see that on page 3? $284,993.
From the insurance dividend.
Yes, yes.
Let me ask you this one, how much are we, how much are we taking from the funds to balance the budget in total?
This year,
Yes,
nothing this year.
No. Just the general fund?
now in total, all of the funds. that we
All
have.
of the funds combined
Yeah,
is. I can do the math for you. Each fund shows the transfer that is coming into that particular fund
I
to
think
fund
there's only one in
projects.
storm sewer. That's the only one projected for 2025.
Getting it, but then there's also a transfer
my
into,
math, I had $446, does that sound about right?
Yeah, that is.
That's here. Transfer from insurance dividend. Or delivery escrow and the 15.
you have to go to, Dave, the easiest way to find those questions. The beginning of each fund.
Right.
So if you go to the beginning of the general fund and you go to the revenues. Right,
Are we talking 2025 or 26? 26. If you look at insurance dividend fund, it'll show you the 3 transfers. That's page 26.
but if you also go down to interfund transfers, which is typically the last revenue item. In the revenue category for each fund, it'll show you what the transfers are. So for the interfund transfer from into the general fund from the dividend fund is $284,993. And then if you go back to special funds, you can see at the top under revenue, transfer from the bond fund, transfer from other funds. So that's where all those transfers are easily identified.
And what's the general rule of thumb on how much we should be transferring from the funds to balance the budget?
So I would say that there's not a general rule on how much you should transfer. I would say there's more of a general rule on how much you should retain in your reserves that are unrestricted. And it's typically 2 months of revenue, is the kind of rule of thumb.
Where do we stand on that?
We exceed that. With the remaining fund balance after all transfers are completed to all funds.
I think it's important that if we look at the trend of how much we're taking from the funds to balance the budget, that the amount that we have unrestricted would decrease.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so I'm just gonna finish just like the overview of funds. So just again, coming into the general fund, this year we have $392,000 worth of grants that have already been approved. We have $4.2 million in grants that have been applied for, but not yet awarded.
I don't know if it makes sense. Study lab, for the list of grants that have not been awarded, is it kind of a case by case basis? If for some reason it doesn't come through, that then we look at where that funding comes from, or are some of these projects that then we don't go forward with?
We typically will not go forward with them. The only one that I could say that is budgeted for this coming year, which we would love to get a grant for, is the holiday storm sewer line, because it needs to
Okay.
be completed. Some things you know, some things, you know, like the green light go, you know, we don't have to do those traffic signal improvements. We want to. We don't have to do them. They're not critical. You know, the improvements to Park Edge Park, we want to do them. But if we don't get the money, we don't have to go forward. Things like that.
No, that's fine, I just
Yeah.
wanted to.
Just generally, yeah, they try not to. So, and then, tied to the capital fund is the 5-year capital budget, which is just, it is inclusive of all of the expenses for this year's capital budget, but then it also includes, some forecasting for future years. So if we know we have a really big expense 2 years from now, it's kind of nice to know that now so that we could potentially go after some grant revenue. Next, sanitary sewer fund. This fund is funded entirely from sanitary sewer user fees, and it includes payments to Alcoasand for treatment services. And then other expenses in that fund would include, you know, infrastructure maintenance, infrastructure evaluation. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into that fund particularly, but we've been trying to be pretty aggressive and proactive with trying to identify issues so that they may be repaired in a more cost-effective fashion. The Stormwater Management Fund, this fund is funded by the general fund, grant revenues, and interfund transfers. Again, it is what it says it is. It's to help manage all of our stormwater infrastructure. And that fund in particular this year, as we'll go through and we get a little bit later in the budget, that includes 3 pretty significant projects. Technically 4, one very significant project that we've had in the budget for the last year or two, and then 3 new projects.
Why are we transferring money from the insurance fund to cover this stormwater fund? Why don't we have the bond money to pull from?
Good question. So some of the money, you'll see if you look at the transfers on the general, in the storm fund, if you go to that page, there is $1,014,000 being transferred from the bond fund, and that is to cover infrastructure projects or like capital projects. The other funds are being transferred in to cover the maintenance of the system, just general maintenance projects. They don't rise to the level of something you would spend bond proceeds on.
Why are we using the insurance fund? Why are we pulling from the insurance fund?
Because it's an unrestricted reserve. Where, did you have a suggestion?
Isn't the bond also unrestricted?
So typically bond funds are reserved for capital projects, projects that are anticipated to last 15+ years. You know, bond financing, when you finance money, the purpose for which you're financing should meet or exceed the debt service schedule. So we try not to spend it on things that it's just routine maintenance every year, fixing manholes. You know, sometimes we just have some manholes that need replaced and things like that. And that's typically not the type of thing you would spend bond proceeds on. So the lion's share of the money for the large capital projects, those are all coming out of the bond fund.
Yeah.
Okay. The real estate tax escrow fund, this money has been set aside. I consider this it's not restricted, it's not uncommitted, it's been set aside, kind of committed, if you will, for real estate tax refunds. If council would need that money for another purpose, they could use it for any purpose that they want. But it's been a conscious decision to set that money aside so that if we would have multiple large refunds, we're not digging into the general fund. You know, it doesn't throw off that budget.
Do we have any tax appeals that are on the list that are waiting to be filed?
Nothing significant that I'm aware nothing like, I think the largest one that had come in the last maybe year and a half was, I want to say somewhere between 20 and 30,000. If that, and I don't even know that that's stuck, because sometimes, so what we do on those really large appeals, those typically go through, we ride the coattails of the school district, because they file for the appeals and they go to bat and fight them, because obviously they have a lot more money in the, to cut, to lose or not, so. And then, GRB, Jake Leland, he typically keeps us surprised if there's anything significant coming up. So the bond fund, you may recall, we secured those proceeds back in February of 2021. The total proceeds out of that was $7.5 million. We invested those funds very wisely in state and local government securities, and they've been doing quite well. The current balance of that fund is $7.6 million, and that is net of expenses already paid out for the pool. And then again, just some of those other funds that you'll see in the budget. There's a total of 14. 4 do all the heavy lifting. The other 10 funds are, again, just funds that are either restricted in some way, or reserved, or completely unreserved and available for council to spend. They've been established to identify in a way that identifies the source of the money into those funds.
In the bond fund, do we have a list of projected projects that, I mean, you have the expenditures here that are current expenditures, but do we have an anticipated budget for those projects that would be paid for by the bond fund?
That, you mean that 1,014,000 that is being transferred into storm?
Well, that's more, but I mean, the other projects, so the pool,
What page you on, Dave?
the bond fund 17.
Oh, geez. Okay. And I don't mind if we jump around, just so I'm not confusing anybody. Well, I was just doing kind of the overview of it. I don't mind going to the bond fund, questions there. Okay, so I'm sorry, what is the question?
So we have the remaining balance.
2,418,000. So here, I'll
This is
just,
the 2021, am I looking at the right thing?
yes,
This is the 2021 bond.
yes,
Okay.
yes, okay. So right now, as of 10/31, we have $7.6 million in there, rounding. You can see that as the footnote towards the bottom of the page.
Right.
7.6 million, okay? And then if we would spend everything we've budgeted to spend, we would be at $2.4 million remaining in bond funds. So that's if we transfer out, you could see the transfers under 23,452,100. So there's 3.7 million for the pool, 500,000 for the bathhouse, and then the 1,014,000 for the storm sewer projects. So if we went through and spent all those monies, remaining would be 2.4 million, because we're starting with 7.6.
And that 3.75, that's based on projected cost, based on the architect's estimate of 4.5 minus the grants.
Grant, yes, and those are identified in the capital fund
And when do we expect the bids to come in for the pool?
next Monday.
Okay,
So we will know in advance of budget. You know, if we get a bid for $3 million, council may say, yes, let's do it. If we get a bid for 7 million, we may say absolutely not.
Okay.
So we'll know by the time the budget we'll send out a summary of what we're looking at, probably that Wednesday before Thanksgiving is when the budget or the agenda for December 1st will go out, which, by the way, December 1st is the date of budget adoption.
is the what?
The date of budget adoption, Aldo had asked that question. So,
I don't think I got an answer rest of that for the
Okay.
question. So you have the pool at 3.75, so the remaining 2.4 million. What do we have projected to spend on that?
Do not have anything projected as of now. So when we borrowed those funds, 6.5 million was to be spent on the bridge. And $1 million was to be spent to renovate the pool. Since the time the bond issue was secured, because you have to figure this goes back to 2020. And we determined that the pool was not, it was not a good investment to renovate the pool. And the bridge is now being paid for by the tip. So that leaves the entire bond proceeds available for capital infrastructure projects at the discretion of council.
And we have 100% confidence that the bridge is being
I do.
paid for by the tip.
I do,
We have
yes.
written document, like it is signed, sealed, and all this stuff.
They don't sign and seal anything, but I have been told multiple times, and we can have them come back again. The tip apparently is not considered discretionary funding, and the funding is already there and it has been approved, is what I'm told. Okay. So with that, so again, the general fund revenues are, reasonably uneventful. The budget does include that additional funding from the $500,000 tax increase. So if that increase were not to be included, an additional, nearly $80,000 would have to come out of one of the reserve funds. So unless there's any other questions on revenues, I can talk a little bit about some expenditures. So one of the reasons why. No, good.
Sorry to give you time, just my question
Mhm.
on revenue. Act 511 taxes line 3110 and 700.
What's the name? What's the,
Mechanical device.
yes,
I know this seems minor, however, it's almost the price of what we pay for the entire Oktoberfest. So when, people talk about, all the money spent on Oktoberfest, something this minor could fund it. Why the ups and downs of the mechanical devices? And is it because of a lack of someone pursuing the, collecting the mechanical devices?
I would agree. I would agree with that. I'd say it's a lack of attention to it. I would say that I believe, in my opinion, the process is bad. I've already rethought the process. I've reached out to some other communities to see how they do that, how they manage it. And I will commit to council that we will do better for 2026. We will get all of that and then some, to the extent that it's out there. I recognize that is definitely a shortfall. I don't like it. But I do think some, I think the processes can be improved, and I think we'll do much better. Okay, so when we talk about expenses, again, the expenses for the general fund are primarily, this is just the day-to-day operating. It's just the day-to-day services provided, everything we need to do to maintain our parks, our facilities, provide refuse collection, just everything that we do throughout the year. So that's primarily everything in the general fund. And some of the increases you'll see on page 5, the highlighted ones, obviously, in police, it's mostly, a lot of that is salary and benefits, contractual increases. There's the waste management contract has a bump this year of $70,900. And then there's that bump to the library. To which I will summarize that a little bit. And then I know Dana Trey, our library director, is here, and she would like to address council just to talk a little bit about library programming and how the recommended increase can really help them. So that increase, the library is funded by various sources that I identified in the budget message. And for years, we have paid for the salaries, 60-40. We pay 60%, the library has to come up with the funding of 40% for their salaries. We are recommending an increase. It was been discussed by the library board and it was presented to me. And I agree that I think we should increase the funding to a 75-25 split. So the borough would pay 75% of the salaries. And the library would then, that would help reduce the funding they have to come up with the 25%. So maybe this would be a good time. I could turn it over to Dana so she could just talk a little bit about the library services so council can see the value, which I think it requires explanation, but I think it's always nice to have one. And then after that, we can go through the rest of the budget. And then if council has any specific questions about any specific departments, I would say excluding the fire, because we'll get to them at the end under the fire department fund. So here you go, Dana.
The day before, I just had a question about the numbers. So page 12, 456, 101, 2026 budget versus 2025 budget is showing an increase of 34,000.
It doesn't really add up. It's not linear like that, Dave. But if you take the salary number, if you just add salary numbers and you calculate what 60% is versus what 75% is, it does come up to about a $58,000 increase. I don't want to mislead anybody. It does come up to about $58,000. I know, believe me, I know what it's confusing.
1,000, that one.
Why it doesn't say 58,000 there. So the library, the money coming in from the library, it comes up short on revenue. Because now they're only paying 25% as opposed to 40%. Believe me, I went through that multiple times, but I can assure you, I looked at their salaries, I added up all the numbers, and going from 65 to 75 is in fact $58,000.
It's the 15% difference going from 60 to 75. So that.
But when you try to do the linear and you look at it in here, I could see where it doesn't make sense that it is. I could tell you it's 37,000, but it's not, it's 58.
What you're saying is the total, and I'm not
Yeah, for sure.
arguing whether or not we should pay. I'm just want to make sure.
Trying to
it's just the
understand.
numbers. So you're saying 75%, 75%, which would for 2026 be 280,000. So I'm reading that as our cost, our expense to the library for salary and wages would be 280, but then in the budget it says 240, 241.
Yeah, but then you have all those numbers down below that go into that calculation. You've got workers' comp, you've got insurance, pension, everything. You've got all those other numbers in there. When I say salaries, it's the cost of having them here, which includes FICA, workers' comp, insurance, pension, and so on.
So that wouldn't be 373.
No, because there's a couple other
Oh, I see.
expenses.
So it's
Yeah.
241 plus.
Yeah. And I can give you, I'm happy to send you the breakdown by email. That way you're comfortable with it, but it does. I'd love to make it less. But it is what it is. Yeah.
Cool microphone, like Madonna.
Should have flipped it.
Hello. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. You heard a little bit about what Judy had to say, and we did collaborate with her, the library board and the library staff to come up with this budget request. So thank you for considering it. I wanted to remind you a little bit about the why behind the app, and that's, why the library is so important in the community. I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. A lot of you are library users, so you probably already know some of this. The library is open 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And we have nearly 5,000 people with library cards here. That's a phenomenal number for a community of our size. And many more people use the library. We service anybody who walks through our doors. And as you know, people think of the library as so much more than just a place for books or a building or a website. For those who use us, we're a fundamental part of their everyday lives. So just a few examples, kids coming in, getting their first library card. They can come to our preschool stories time. We help get them ready for kindergarten. That's a bonus for everybody. We have struggling families or individuals that might come in, they need computer access. We provide, free computers and internet access. Newcomers coming to the, Green Tree and they're looking for community, they can often find it at the library. Through many of our different programs and presentations, we have, book clubs, we have workshops, we have crafts and lectures, movies, anything anybody could ever want. And it's just a place where people can gather, learn and connect. There's, no barriers. It's one of the last public spaces where people can simply exist. And there's always that promise that someone will be there to help you, at the library. So this is really the heart of what we do. And, as you can imagine, demand for the work that we do is growing. So we're seeing more visitors at the library. We're getting more questions, more demands on our time, and more people relying on us for the services that we offer. That's something we're really proud of, that we have this growth, but it also means that we're sort of reaching the limit, or if I'm to be honest, we've reached the limit probably several years ago of what we're able to do with our current, funding structure and with our, staffing as the way it is. So, we're requesting this increase to support strengthening that staffing and to, overall improve the library's finances so that we can grow without, drawing on our reserves.
Any questions?
Any questions about that? I can go into more detail.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Does that mean that potentially the library could be open more evenings throughout the week? Instead of the 2 that we have, like later evenings past 7 o'clock?
So this would allow us to achieve 3 things, which is to, meet our current budget without drawing into our reserves, to allow us to spend 12% of our, budget on collections, which is the state standard, and to, add 1 more staff member. I do not believe at this time it would allow greater flexibility for opening hours. Really, what we're doing with this is playing catch up essentially. We're really trying to, be at a place where we should be, but future proofing is always something that we're looking at for the library and extra growth. Question?
Good job, David. Okay. So that funding, additional funding for the library is included in the general fund, expenses. So, that's all there is for that as far as the library goes. Again, other departments within the general fund are really pretty basic increases, mostly just salary benefit type things that are contractual. Everything else is pretty modest. One of the things, like say in fire protection, vehicle maintenance did go up pretty significantly because, believe it or not, new equipment is much more expensive to maintain than old equipment. It's unfortunate, but it's a fact. So let's see, and then the waste management obviously is identified on page 10. And the public works increases, again, mostly just personnel related increases. If you go to, on page 11, we do have Jen Matthew, our rec director here. If anybody has any questions for Jen, we really kind of just stayed the course with the budget for next year, keeping everything pretty much the same. Some things that could affect the rec budget. One of the big events is 4th of July at the pool. We're talking about adding maybe some additional activities for the 4th of July 250th celebration. I think at this point, we're really looking maybe to do a lot of small activities rather than one very large one, which I think is really nice because it gives more opportunities for the community to get involved if they You know, if you just do one big thing on the 4th of July, people are out of town, a lot of people have other commitments. It's a lot of money spent for a lot of people, and a lot of people can't participate, so.
I had
Oh, sure,
I have some questions, or a very basic one. So this actually goes back to page 2 when we're talking
Oh,
about
sure.
revenues.
revenues.
Under recreation, under recreation, you know, there's facility rentals, program fees, and special activities. What is a special activity versus what people pay for? I believe like program fees is what I'm getting charged to send my kid to rec, right? Reasonable nominal cost makes a lot of sense. What do we consider the special activities? Because that's a significant amount higher than program fees.
That's summer rec.
No,
No,
it's
Oh, I'm
like
sorry.
this program. It's like Light Up Night, it's Oktoberfest. it's,
Oh, right.
Yeah. July
The
4th
big,
is
the big
yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
okay. So like the key, we would almost like consider them like key banner events. Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just gonna flip back to page 11. So again, recreation's in there. Swimming pool, obviously budgeted is that will be opening on Memorial Day next year. And then the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. With respect to the tax increase, one of the reasons that kind of prompted the tax increase, could we get through 2026 without it? We absolutely could. There's no doubt about it. We've been very fortunate to have solid fund reserves built up over these past several years. And those fund reserves are represented in the reserve fund, the healthcare fund, and the insurance dividend fund. They've all been very healthy. They continue to get some income through the workers' compensation dividends, healthcare rebates, and so on. One of the things, though, that is going to come about, not in 2026, but in 2027, is if you look down on page 12 where it says debt service, 2021 bond general issue. So when that bond issue was floated, part of the bond was a refunding of sewer revenue bonds that were associated with the sewer fund work, you know, sewer infrastructure. All of that will be paid off in 2026. So in 2027 is when we start paying the portion of the bond that's related to non-sanitary sewer expenses. And that will be, the debt service on that is $497,000. So again, we have more than enough money to get through this year, but as I see next year, having a pretty significant expense in the general fund that is completely unrelated to infrastructure projects, I think it's important this year to start bringing that revenue stream up a little bit in order to kind of pave the way for that additional expense in 2027.
And how many years will we be paying back the bond?
So on the very last page in your budget, you can see that the final debt service payment is made in 2045. Okay. So,
Just a side note, what page are you showing the people watching this on? Are you on page 24?
No, because I'm not following exactly what she was doing. I just went to the bond page for the payments.
with the questions, yeah, back and forth, it'll be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, so, and mine doesn't match your page numbers.
Oh, so we didn't go to that page.
Yeah.
It's the very last one. Okay, so,
I have a question.
sure.
Let's say that, we decided not to spend $4 million on the pool and did something that cost significantly less and had, sounds like we have 2 point some million that's not scheduled to be spent. If we save money on the pool, could we prepay down the bond early?
We could, but in this economic climate, I'm not sure I would recommend that because those bonds, the interest rate on those are below 3%.
So we're gonna have to
Like
raise
crazy.
taxes again to pay for bonds just so that we have reserve.
Again, you can refund early. I'd have to talk to bond counsel about that, but I think that this community is going to continue to have infrastructure projects that are going to need done. And once your reserves are gone, they're gone, and it's very difficult to build them back up through tax increases. I would not recommend that.
No, I'm not suggesting that we should
Okay.
continue to fund our special funds. I'm saying that we have this bond issue where we're gonna have to start paying $500,000 a year on. Right?
But you also have $7.5 million to pay for other projects. So if you don't have that money, if you don't have, so say if you give back all the money and you get rid of your debt service,
We don't spend as much money as we're planning on spending.
I don't believe, I don't know, because I was not present when that bond issue was floated. I don't know what the terms are. It could be that you would have to pay almost $500,000 a year until it's paid off, but it will be paid off in 2030 instead of 2040, whatever it was. So I don't know that they would restructure the debt, and if they did, they would probably restructure it at a much higher rate.
Be interesting to know.
We can do
I
that,
know
we
with
can,
raised taxes
yep.
on the pool, I think we would all agree on. And it sounds like that's the direction we're headed.
Well, if we did not get the bridge paid for, then it would be a second bond on
Bridge is
it.
not paid for yet. Until I see that written, documented, signed, sealed, and delivered, the bridge is not paid for yet.
Well, okay, and we can I'll get whatever comfort level the council needs, but I have been told in no uncertain terms, no, that
Conversation or written?
I've gotten it in writing as well.
Oh, I'd love to see.
It's an email. I will send it to you. Yes.
I
So,
would also like to know if restructuring the debt service is an option for us and what that would look like.
we could do that. That would be a conversation where we would have to bring bond counsel in, and they would have to look at the terms of it. Or he may be able to look at the terms and let us know what our options are without actually coming in to meet with council. But if there's going to be a back and forth with questions, sometimes it's more efficient just to have them come
Because
in.
the way I see this, and I didn't realize this was gonna go up to $500,000, but also we're gonna be, it's a double whammy because we're also gonna be paying for new waste or new garbage collection.
Potentially.
Contract.
So,
Potentially.
and
We are, because the contract is out, right?
I do, but what I don't know is how much it's gonna go up from where it's at now.
Well, we know based on neighboring communities that it's gonna go substantially.
It could. I do think, there's a couple things we can talk about, and I did already initiate the conversation with Waste Management about an extension that might be favorable. But I do think Green Tree's in a pretty unique position in that we have garbage collection 1 day a week. Most communities have garbage collection 5 days of the week because of their size. I think that puts us in a position to probably be able to secure proposals from more companies because they don't need the infrastructure, the equipment, because they've got to be in the community every single day, 5 days a week. So I think there's an opportunity now. I know when this contract came in back in 2021, County Hauling was extremely disappointed they didn't get the business. County Hauling is now in Mount Lebanon. So, I don't know. I can't just say for sure. I think that's a couple years away, technically 3. So better part of 2. So it's hard to say what's going to happen between now and then, and what we might be able to secure. Our current contract is through the end of 2027. So a new contract would not take effect until 2028, which we would put out to bid at the beginning of 2027. So we know what we're looking at.
Judy, also, we were told that because we collect the garbage, we pay the garbage bill and they don't have to individually charge the residents. We're in a much better position than if they would have to come in and, bill the residents rather than make one payment. We were always told that. So,
Oh, I would absolutely agree with that.
yes.
But that's pretty uncommon in densely populated areas. That's typically like a rural You know, if you live, you know, maybe out in Beaver County, they may have something like that where there's fewer homes and a lot of space in between.
No, I'm talking about like if each residence got a garbage bill and required to pay that
Directly to the garbage
directly
company.
to the garbage.
Oh, yeah, I don't know of anybody that does that.
There's communities that do that.
I think that there are, Ron, communities that bill the residents separately for garbage because they want them to see how much it costs. So in other words, if you would take our garbage contract and you would divide it up by the number of households and then you send the households a bill, that's what a lot of communities do. I know Peters Township does that. They'll bill it quarterly. I mean, I'm personally not in favor of that because it's another revenue stream that you have to collect. There's a cost to collection. There's a cost to going after the
And that's what I'm
delinquents.
saying, that's one of
Yeah.
our assets. is that
Yes.
We don't have that
Yeah.
system, we pay directly the garbage bill, in fact, for the residents, that's a very. Nice asset for the residents that they're not getting a separate municipal waste garbage bill. Like some communities that you do.
They do. A lot of communities will, instead of like, just for instance, come 2028, Green Tree could say, rather than increase the millage, we are going to send a bill to every single home that gets garbage collection. Again, I'm not, that's just a philosophical thing. I don't agree with that.
Absolutely.
If you put it on a pie chart, you could see where break down their tax dollar and they could see where it's going. I think it's inefficient, but that's my personal opinion on that. Okay, so, does council have any questions on the general fund?
Where were the road programs that?
Road program is in capital.
Okay.
All right, so next we'll just move to the individual funds and I'll be having Jason Stanton from Lennon Smith talk about some of our programs. The first will be the Storm Sewer Fund. And if you look up at revenues, you'll see that there's $916,000 grant that we had received. We had received that about 2 years ago. We had spent some of the funds on the rain garden that was completed last year. And then this year we'll be transferring $1 million from the bond fund and then 216 from the insurance dividend fund. And the only reason there's that split, that difference, is because I see if you look down in expenses at 436,200, infrastructure maintenance, that's $165,000. And then down below, there's some engineering fees, CCTV investigations, permitting fees. All those are maintenance related. So I don't believe in taking bond funds, spending bond funds for those. So within the expenses, the first one you'll see is the $655,000. That is cumulative as footnoted below. The Dale Drive swell and retention area restoration, Holiday Drive storm line, and then the Trumbull Drive trough restoration project. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason, and he can walk through those projects. So where's the Dale?
Thanks, Judy. Again, there's a number of different initiatives in the Storm Sewer Fund program into 2026. Judy just mentioned 3 of those that are in line item 210, if you will, under system-wide infrastructure capital.
Then I have Mansfield.
And so Holiday Drive storm line, that again is a component of a program that we've talked over several years. It tried to repair kind of a little bit each year. So it's not to break the bank in terms of a budget, although we've applied for several grant funds, including some that, should be announced shortly. Um, we're projecting a budget for Holiday Drive, and that would be the black bubbles that are up on the screen. And are also included in the budget binder, if you will. Key element to that, if you're driving up Holiday Drive, in front of the former Crown Plaza, you'll see a pavement area that's recently restored. That was repaired in 2024. Currently, you'll see construction in the next 2 weeks. The vendor is starting to stage their equipment. Basically from that area working down towards Mansfield Avenue. So that's the area of a light blue bubble that's projected up on the screen that's included in the 2025 budget that the construction is getting started on, this week. The area of Holiday Drive is above that. And continuing up the roadway, there's still a significant amount of storm sewer improvements that need done on Holiday Drive. Those 3 projects, in addition to the one that under expenditures that you see at 1.275, that project is the Borough Stream Restoration Project along Whiskey Run, that's going to be bid in December. Presented to council. It was included in 2025 budget. The permits from DEP just came in the last month. The right of ways have been signed by the property owners. And that project's now right to be bid and awarded by council early in the new year. So those are the key elements in terms of capital funds related to the storm sewer, if there's any questions there.
Could you elaborate on the stream restoration? I just want everyone to, maybe I'm getting it wrong, where I was told you're gonna take all the vegetation away from the stream. And then you're gonna put more vegetation back in its place.
Yeah, and
And that's gonna accomplish so many metric tons of sludge entering the water. But yet, how do you calculate how many metric tons of sludge will be saved by different vegetation? And for vegetation, 1.2 million just seems like, a lot, like, the vegetation on the stream right now doesn't seem that bad,
And that project is part of the borough's MS4 permit. The borough has a permit. It's an acronym. MS4 is an acronym for Municipal Storm Sewer System. Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, 4 S's.
Right.
And the permit cycle started in 2018. And theoretically, it concluded in 2023. However, the state gave the municipalities 3 additional years. Okay, that project is part of our MS4 permit. Was designed to do 2 things: remove sediment, meaning solids, meaning debris, meaning silt, meaning, any of that. And nutrient reductions, meaning phosphorus, those sorts of things, based on an absolutely theoretical value that the state set aside. It doesn't have a basis in reality, other than it complies with the guidance related to the state MS4 permit. And so many linear feet of stream restoration, and that scope means removing the sediment, removing some of the vegetation that's there. Installing best management practices, including logs, including new plantings, in accordance with DEP's, manual. Widening the stream in certain areas and, removing a lot of the non-native material. So that's generally what's in the scope. And in terms of how that's calculated, in terms of DEP's manual, you remove so many tons of sediment per stream footage and remove so many tons or so many pounds of nutrients per foot of stream that's restored. So that's how it's calculated. All the municipalities, and we have different watersheds here in Green Tree, that being Whiskey Run. That I believe it's around 1,800 linear feet. You do the arithmetic and you get so many pounds of phosphorus removal, nutrient removal, so many pounds of solids removal. That complies with the DEP criteria.
I have a question. I have a question about that.
Oh, God. Well, batteries.
Is it?
There you go, there you go.
When is the state's fleecing of small municipalities gonna end? Of these unfunded stupid mandates, like, it's ridiculous, let's be honest.
I mean, Dave, I don't have a good answer to that question. It's a federal permit that the feds delegate to the states. Our next MS4 permit, which will start in 2026 and go to 2031, will focus on volume management. Meaning, rather than a theoretical value in terms of solids and nutrients, it'll be based on volumes of stormwater control. And that's gonna be a different challenge here in Green Tree because of our mature environment, different things like that. We have to look at different ways to construct stormwater management. The new permit will be geared more towards flooding and peak flow management than it will be water quality.
What happens to municipalities that can't afford this?
I'm not sure, I wanna know. And I'll be candid with you, in the eastern part of the state, DEP has gone after and find municipalities that are not moving forward with their MS4 obligations. And I certainly don't want that to happen here in Green Tree.
And I will say, I think it's important to note that, you know, just looking at the revenue, we have received $1.2 million in grant revenue to cover some of these projects. So that's, you know,
We spent using taxpayer dollars over the years. Going back to
Yeah,
separating.
it's a lot.
It's a lot, it's way
It's a
more
lot,
than.
for sure.
That's the new, if you will, when I started my career, the emphasis was on sanitary sewer investment and infrastructure by the municipalities. And municipalities got used to investing in their sanitary sewer systems. And, you know, the last 10 years in terms of MS4 permits, the state's leading on the municipalities to now invest in their storm sewer infrastructure.
And haven't we done that?
Yes, and we will continue. The municipalities will continue to do that, yes.
So we have.
Sure, I guess the next graphic is Dale Drive.
It's 38.
That's a
Yeah.
project,
Sorry.
that was part and parcel to, development. Okay. Let's zoom out a little bit, I guess.
Hold on.
Share my view. You wanna see mine, I will share mine.
Does that work, Chase? I think that works.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you zoom
Like that.
out?
Hard to get there.
It gets real pixelated, unfortunately, there. Is that way here?
Yeah,
Yep.
Dale Drive takes stormwater from El Rancho to the top of Tamino. And it conveys flow to the drainage swale to the rear of the residence on Dale Drive. Conveys that flow down gradient to, the large culvert that parallels Glencoe Avenue. That's a public stormwater facility that was accepted by the borough in the late eighties, very difficult to access. And, one of the large rain events, from earlier this spring, there was some flooding reported in that area. Pulling out, the record drawings, there's a public swale that needs maintained there.
And if I may just weigh in here, this matter was brought to our attention, you may recall, by a resident. She actually came to our meeting. This is a situation where the water was flowing down the hill around the block in the back, and it was literally filling her backyard like a bathtub. Yeah, and but this is to address an issue that's not gonna resolve itself, so.
In our public works department, shortly after that storm cleaned the area up. Where the stormwater management pond is, remove some of the silt, remove some of the vegetation. But also that whole swale between, Tomato and Dale Drive. As bad of access it is, does need some badly needed maintenance on that, and that's one of the projects that is included in the storm water fund this year.
So again, that project is directly addressing an issue that came about this summer, and we're going after it and taking care of it.
Yeah, the issue that built up here, right? Like it's not like, it was a cataclysm, it was awful that it was happening, but it's because for years.
It's- Yeah, Jason, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it reminds me a little bit of the situation on Arla, where the Arla storm outfall was being placed in one home's backyard. And so we got in there and we managed that, and this is a very similar situation. And it's gonna be Jason, right? It's gonna be a pretty difficult project just because the access is so difficult, so.
Yes, and Shannon, you're right, it was something that evolved over, the last 40 years, since that swale was built, and, it's something that needs addressed in the short term moving forward enough to budget it for this coming year.
And could you explain a little bit about what makes it so difficult to access it?
The houses the houses on Dale Drive and the houses on, Tomato, they're very close together. Mainly just basically a driveway, and then essentially driving off the backyard into the swale that's in the back of those houses.
And a lot of them have fences.
A lot of fences, a lot of sheds, a lot of those sorts of things that makes it difficult to maintain a drainage swale. And so, part of that work is to reestablish, that drainage between those two streets. Access smaller equipment between the houses, the actual equipment needed to do the work should probably be bigger, but have to do it with smaller equipment, just to be able to get between the houses.
And getting all the dirt.
And the material needed, whether it be stone, whether it be soil, whether it be, erosion control, everything's difficult to fit between the houses there.
How long does a repair like this last for?
Typically 10 to 15 years, you try to grade it to the extent that it minimizes erosion. In some of those areas, some of the property owners have built, smaller walls and different things like that with gardens and different things that minimize or sometimes decrease the useful life of it, but part of it is to, establish quality erosion control measures to preclude it from, eroding and then settling down at the bottom along the houses on Glencoe.
And,
When
and
you're doing these calculations, with the advent of much larger, much more, intense rainfall amounts that we have been receiving over and over again, which has brought a lot of these issues to light. When you're doing these calculations, are you anticipating or presuming that that will continue or possibly increase? So that you put this in for these residents, but we don't have it like not be able to handle anything in 2 years because we have a higher level of water.
And that's a very good point. By and large, the Dale Drive projects to reestablish what was there 40 years ago, because it's drastically changed. In terms of moving forward under the new MS4 permit, 26 and beyond, even though rainfall is changing and it's coming at a lot larger intensities and things like that, the state standards will continue to drive, the size of stormwater ponds and obviously the costs. Acknowledging that the frequency by which we have rainfall events that exceed those standards happens more frequently. And so, the key question is, if you're designing a stormwater pond and you have a larger storm event that exceeds that storm event, what happens there? That emergency spillway able to get to another stream before it gets to a neighboring property? Those are the kind of things that you take into consideration. But in terms of Dale Drive, it's reestablishing what was there once upon a time so that we do get the drainage back and not have a lot of sediment catch up down on Glencoe.
And like Jason said, we're reestablishing what was originally established. And I think one of the things in particular that Carrie and I have talked about is to kind of have written protocols, written maintenance of routine inspections to ensure that, like 5-6 years from now, we don't want nobody to go out and look at it. We want people out there at least every other year, walking it, looking at it to make sure that it's not getting overgrown. And then you have to go back with this big massive project. Maybe had that happened throughout the years, we wouldn't be here. But the fact of the matter is, it's one of those things where we need to establish those lists of areas that require routine maintenance and observation to ensure that we don't have to come back to a massive project.
So back to the budget, so these projects that we're talking about, does that come under the system-wide infrastructure capital?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
are we saying that, at the end of 2026, we'll have nothing left in that fund?
These funds typically are always zeroed out. The only way they carry a balance is if there's projects that aren't done that we know we're going to try to get to do the following year. Like you'll see up top, Dave, where you see fund balances.
Yeah.
It went from 26 up to 552 down to 225, and then it was just held. Sometimes, like for instance, that one point, the stream restoration project, that's carried for a couple of years because we couldn't get the permitting through. So it kind of gets carried through.
So how do we refund that with what?
Well, so you could see up above in 2025, we had the $1 million plus the 275. And that was picking stuff up down below. We were spending down some of the 542 that obviously, it gets spent down. But if we don't need to carry a fund balance here. We typically, Green Tree's a little bit unique. Typically fund balances are always carried in the general, at least my experience has been, they're always carried in the general fund or in a fund if the source of the funds restricts it, like the sewage fund. Or the sanitary fund. But, you know, we do things a little bit differently. We transfer it in, we spend it out. And then the next year we plan it out and we transfer in and spend it and so on.
So what do we have pending for, 27?
We don't have 2027 in here.
There may be some elements in the 5-year capital improvement program that.
In terms of grants, pending grants that could fund this in the future, because Jason said earlier that wouldn't have anticipated major stormwater projects.
If you go back to the budget message, Dave, there's a whole list of, some projects that we have put in there. A lot of them for the, Holiday Mansfield, project. You know, like clearly we get those funds, then it frees up other money to do other projects, right? So, this Dale project obviously just came around this summer. The Trumbull Trough, that's been around a little bit, but that's not like a huge expenditure, but you know, it's kind of like when you put them all together, it's a lot of money.
In one of those grant funding sources on page 3 of 6 is the GEDTF program. And the Commonwealth Financing Authority just released their agenda today. The GEDTF awards are listed on their agenda. And that meeting's tomorrow, so. Let's keep our fingers crossed that we get some funding for that. That, you know, positively impacts our storm sewer fund.
Well, I'm all for crossing fingers, but also like we're not committing to any of these projects until we have the funds.
We do have the funds because we're transferring from the bond fund. Yeah, in the storm fund, it's all paid. It's paid for through the bond funds. So as you can see, the 655 and then the 1,275,000. Okay, will be funded in part by the 916 and the million.
So the page 3 of 6, we're talking about grants.
And I asked
that are
earlier in the meeting, if
anticipated.
we don't get those grants, and she said.
Yes.
Then we don't move forward with the project.
Yes.
Like,
I agree.
it becomes
Yeah.
Priority.
Okay, so the trough is.
Yeah, the last project under the storm sewer improvements is a project along Trumbull Drive. Pretty large drainage area, Green Tree Borough that's piped to Trumbull Drive, at which point it goes open channel, meaning it's a pipe, and then it runs along the ground. There's a concrete wall that serves as essentially part of a retaining wall holding Trumbull Drive up. And last year, there was about 75-foot section of that trough that needed rehabilitation. We were hesitant to move forward with it. From the perspective, we wanted to see if perhaps it was in the PennDOT scope of work associated with the interchange. Fast forward to this fall, it's getting worse. There's about 150 feet that needs to be repaired. And so that was included in the budget to move forward with that work this year. But it's pretty large project, pretty easy to see if you did drive on Trumbull Drive and be able to visualize, you know, what's shown on the maps there. But that's also an area that's in need of improvement that's factored into the budget.
Okay, so I think that kind of wraps up this storm sewer unless anybody has any additional questions. Okay, so the next fund we'll talk about is the sanitary sewer fund. Actually do the details. What's it do here?
39.
Detail, I'm sorry, the 39. Okay, so if you look at the expenditures, they're on page 15. If you go down to 436, 235 is the O&M yearly maintenance. That's the operation and maintenance plan for the entire system. And then I'll have Jason kind of run down through to talk about this. So the expenditures are currently shown on the screen. And again, the ones we'll be talking about are kind of starting with the 65,000, that is 436, 235.
Judy, before we get into the expenditures for revenue for this,
Uh-huh.
I saw we're recommending an increase.
Yes, I did fail. to
Okay,
mention.
that's fine. It shows, I think, $6.75 to $7 per thousand.
Per
Do you have an
1,000 gallons.
estimate or like an average per
So-
household, what that's gonna be per month, or is that?
10,000, you use 10,000 gallons of water, it's an additional $2.50.
Is that what an average house is using right now, or?
I'm,
The average is like 4,000 gallons. a month.
Perfect, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's like a dollar.
it's,
Okay.
it's really not a huge, but, you know, we do a little bit every year and then it kind of helps us keep up.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
The other driver associated with the sanitary sewer increases are treatment costs from Alcosan are going up approximately 7% per year for the next several years. And they've escalated at that rate for several years already. In terms of initiatives, here in Green Tree, we're fortunate in terms of our consent order with the health department that we're what they would call a paragraph 8 community, whereby we didn't have to partake into a large capital improvement to reduce flows, stormwater flows, infiltration, inflow in our sanitary sewer system. We were able to pass a real estate lateral policy that was a little more stringent than just the dye testing that was passed 20-some years ago. So during the real estate transfer process here in Green Tree, our property owners are required to televise that lateral and fix any defects as part of that real estate transfer. So in lieu of that, one of the key items in terms of our sanitary sewer system was to reinvigorate our O&M program, meaning cleaning, televising, those sorts of things. The entire borough was done on a 5-year basis several years back, and in 2025, we're towards the end of 2024, we developed a plan where it stretched that 5-year program and essentially carved the borough up in 10 equal parts, do a 10-year O&M program, acknowledging that there are certain problematic sewers that we hit every year. And so we're at the tail end of finishing off year 1, which was generally on the Rook neighborhood. Some of the interceptor sewers and Robin Hood and that neighborhood that's very light blue that's up on the screen now. So there will be some repairs in those neighborhoods in 2026. And those are included in expenditures 237, 330, 451, and 240. You know, investing in those improvements in the year 1 area. Likewise, continuing that cleaning and televising program in year 2, which is primarily our commercial area along Holiday Drive and Mansfield Drive. So that'll be the focus of this year, and that line item is 235, the yearly maintenance program. And in the budget report, there's the location map that you can see the years better than you can see on the screen. And it also identifies the the unit price contract that was bid in late 2024 that includes a CPI adjusted escalator for work next year, and that was all factored into line item 235.
What year are we in now?
The year coming up will be year 2. So I think that's the highlights relative to the sanitary sewer system. There's several pages in there of the 10-year rotation. And the thinking is that that would continue, after the 10th year is done, it will start over in year 1.
Just a quick question. I see that Hackford Rider pumps are on here. Is that project complete at this? 100%.
Yes,
So we will not be revisiting that.
correct.
And is that the last of our projects that addresses a non-sewer property in the borough? That we know.
That we know of, yes. Could there be some residents that we don't know of? Perhaps.
And that's what the camera testing is providing us through the property sales.
It should, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions related to sanitary? I think we can go on to capital projects, which is next in the budget report.
The City Vista pump station, there was an issue with that at some point, was there?
Yes, City Vista Lift Station, is a lift station that there's an existing developers agreement that suggests that that lift station would be turned over to the borough for long-term operation and maintenance. Okay. And there were funds budgeted for that operation. There's a couple issues associated with that, including, some of the force main construction and different things like that, they haven't complied with the developers agreement. And so, yes, there were some issues with that the borough hasn't formally taken over operations of that lift station, and the developer or the owner hasn't, continued to pursue the borough taking over operations. So in that case, that hasn't been carried forward in this year's budget.
Yeah, they had a change of his ownership or just general management, and they stepped away from it for the time being.
So they own it or we own it? Who owns
They own it.
Yeah,
it?
I think it's our permit, but they own it, they built it, and that's what the transfer was about.
What about the 1107 True Road Park Road? That's litigation.
That's still in litigation.
Why did we have expenses?
Legal. Yeah, that was the only expenses associated with that this year. Everything else was done last year, 2024 got wrapped up.
Did we recover those legal costs?
We'll go after everything. We'll go after every dime that we put out. And when we submit invoicing to be paid, we indicate if it has fiber optic applicability. Okay, so if there's no other questions on the sewer fund, we'll move over to the capital fund. Capital fund is also, if we don't spend money that was budgeted in that year, it carries the balance up. And you can see at the very top line, there's some, carries that have happened. And that essentially just happens when we budget for a project, but for one reason or another, we don't get it completed. Most of the revenues, all of the revenues in this fund are either grant or transfers from other funds, be it general and or the insurance dividend fund. This year's pretty heavy with expenses. We have some included with the packet is some information. Our geographic information system will expire in 2026. So we need to secure a new geographic information system, which is the tracer information that you'll see in your packet. I don't think we really need to go into any detail on that. We'll evaluate our options throughout the year and then obviously make the best decision that we think suits our needs.
Is that something that goes out to bid, or is that something that's evaluated internally and then?
So it's a software. A lot of those things we can secure through the CoStars program potentially, and that's what we would try to do. we'll obviously secure whatever it is in accordance with the parameters that we need to do so in. So. HVAC, you know, we budget for this, we don't always spend it, things that, could affect the whole building, like the boiler, you know, we will just go ahead and replace them at end of life because sometimes they have long lead times. So we don't want to take the chance of it, you know, not functioning in January, and there's a 6 to 8 week lead time on it. So those types of things, we typically take the recommendation of our HVAC contractor, who also provides us with CoStar pricing, which is, it's very, really helpful. Fire hall improvements, there's just some, you know, basic and mostly cosmetic upgrades over there, to the area of the fire, where the firemen, use that facility. The Borough building upgrades, we had originally planned to do this year, but we didn't get to it. And as it turned out, it worked out well because we could use the, potentially, if they get to it this year, some of that money for the sidewalks, that were done over, that are planned to be done over here. But the library is definitely in need of some updating. It hasn't been updated in probably 15 to 20 years. The carpet, it gets a ton of traffic down there. It is pretty dated. And I think it's one of those things that you want to keep it an attractive space. I am definitely about, if we think that the budget's a little bit stretched and we want to defer this room, we can do that, certainly from a carpet perspective. But one of the things we'll definitely get to, and Dave, I know this was a particular interest, for you and probably all of council, is to get that new AV system going here. And essentially that will be replacing this screen with the screen that's mounted on the back, of the wall, so that both council can see it and the audience, and then some upgrades to the microphone and recording equipment. So I think that's something that, you know, is needed. And we actually have 2 more quotes coming in on that because there is an extremely wide range in the quotes we had received, to the tune of $30,000 difference, which I'm not sure how that happens, but it did. So that's budgeted. Police department, that's in the back of the capital fund. There is a summary of, I think it's in the back of the 5-year capital. There's a summary of all of those expenses, the $128,000 worth of expenses. There's everything from suppressors for rifles to new tasers. There's a whole lineup of equipment, and we could touch on that as we get to the to capital, and we can walk down through that, and certainly Acting Chief Rannigan is here, so he could answer those questions. The vehicles are always scheduled to be replaced 1 a year. The replacement mileage is typically when they hit 80,000 miles. So there's another one coming up next year. The road paving program, and Jason can certainly weigh in on this. If you look through the documentation that Jason wrote up for us, the budget is obviously much larger than what we have budgeted. $1 million clearly is an aggressive budget, but I think, you know, what we're finding is that with the water company and gas company doing so many water line replacements and gas line replacements, you know, they're destroying the roads, and we get a lot of complaints from the residents because the way they patch them is not up to our standards at all. So like we did for this year and like we did for the last couple of years, we work cooperatively with both the water company and the gas company, and we try to get a couple years of their improvements that they have planned so that we can try to follow them with our road program. So last year we did, or this year, last year they did the Robin Hood Forest area. They did Arla before that, and we have followed through with them with our road program to repave all those roads. And so, for instance, this year we received $121,000 reimbursement from the gas company for the roads that they tore up. Now, they would have had to replace them curb to curb, but they don't replace them necessarily to the specification that we would. You know, and some roads are older than others, and so some require more extensive repairs. So I'll let Jason then address.
I have a question about that.
Mhm.
So when the utilities reimburse us, are they reimbursing us on a negotiated rate, or is it a complete reimbursement of whatever we paid to have the road service?
It's based on our unit prices. The borough bids. And then whatever their scope was, for instance, if the water company was on the hook for milling one side of the street and putting the berry on the entire side of or on the entire curbway width, they would pay the milling rates based on our bid contracts, and the prices for, wearing course over the entire width.
What about, the sidewalk, the new sidewalks on Green Tree Road from McQuonical to Banbury? Looks like there's some lateral work done, and there's also, milling of the road, maybe 12 inches from this sidewalk. So will the pavement company be responsible for that? Was it a water line or a gas line that they were putting in, just laterals?
There was some gas company work that was done kind of simultaneous with the borough sidewalk project. But there is an offset that in Green Tree Road that our contractor is responsible for repaving, but anything that the gas company tore up and things like that, they'll be responsible for, obviously, the state road right away.
So would that be from McMonagall to Banbury all the way up?
If that's what the gas company disturbed.
They disturbed, it was perpendicular to the road from the driveways.
Yeah.
So, it's not gonna be patches curb to curb, right? It'll be
Full lanes.
full lanes.
Yes, and that will be up to PennDOT's discretion. It's PennDOT road, in the gas companies will be on the hook for that.
What about the areas where the gas company wasn't involved, like past forest? Where they milled, or they excavated part of the road to build the sidewalk? So it's a section like maybe that wide. Right along the curb. Right along the curb, all the way up.
They put asphalt in there.
They put asphalt in.
Per the contractor, they put $10 I don't know. Which was finished off and they don't know it. Pretty much up to the state, right?
Yeah, that would be a state requirement between them and the gas company.
Even though we have ordinances, I know Judy went back.
Yeah, I know, and
looked at-
Dave, I will tell you, I drive that every day too. And it's really bad shape, and I had reached out to our project manager to talk to PennDOT about that, because it can't stay like that. It's a very terrible patch. But
You're talking the ones that are perpendicular to the side.
running across the road, but that's what
Well,
you
I'm talking
drive
about-
on.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about the particular and the one running.
Yeah.
on the side.
I personally don't find, it's ugly, it doesn't look good. But the ones that cut across the road, those are the ones you're actually driving on.
Right.
Those are really bad, and I've already reached out. And I think what I might do, since we've developed a pretty good relationship with PennDOT, I think, just to try to get an idea of what the requirements are gonna be on the gas company to do those repairs, because it's in pretty bad shape.
And then Jason, when you review the road program, can you explain why we're including the Retreat Park in the road program and not somewhere else? Because those part of the park, not necessarily road.
It's, and one of the things that we've looked at, it was included in the scope of work last year for the 2025 road program. And then we had that real cold snap in January, that there was a lot of heaving on Holiday, Anderson, and some of our other residential roads that kind of postponed any paving in the park and put those funds towards those roadways. So we just started there to update the OPC for those. They are borough owned. And the thinking, and some of the, not necessarily all of the park parking lots, I had to say it real slow, are in bad shape, but there's some that are worse than others that, that'll continue to degrade unless the borough gets to them, but those first two were just included in there to evaluate what the full scope would be and what that investment would be.
We're incorporating that, I know the OPC is 1.3 million, we're budgeting $1 million. Those two are still, what is that, about 600,000?
And I will tell you, I mean, again, it will be fully described, it's council's choice when, we pick and choose what we want to do. I think one of the additional problems with those parking lots are the lines are almost completely gone on them. It's expensive to line the lots, so we have to decide, we don't want to spend money getting things lined, reestablishing all the parking lanes, and then going back a year or two and repaving it.
Yeah.
So it's just a couple issues with it, but it's certainly something we'll talk about when we get to the bidding.
I guess my question is, how does that 600,000 impact the 2026 budget? If we were to eliminate those, does that take us down to more like 700,000 for the road program?
Yeah, if you took those two off, that would decrease that line item budget,
But I don't know.
by that amount. But again, there's, 5 other roads and there's probably 4 or 5 roads that, that could be included on the list, that may end up being included on the list depending on what this winter holds, that's not even in these 9 line items, if you will.
Yeah, I just think, as a borough, we need to, it's been mentioned multiple times tonight that we're in a state where we really have to control costs, and I think some of our worst roads in other communities are their best roads. So maybe looking at, not suggesting to reduce our quality standard, but just maybe think about prioritizing. Do we really need to repave a park? Do we need lines in a parking lot, or it really isn't an issue?
I'm all about that. And again, I think we just put this on here because we see it as something that needs to be on the radar. And if we don't do it, we won't. If we would exclude those, that would take it down to 729. We have $1 million budgeted. So
Well, there's your tax increase.
it is, but I'll just caution you that I believe the tax increase has a lot to do with future expenditures that are on the horizon. 2027 and 2028 could end up being pretty expensive years. And if we get some very severe weather, like we didn't anticipate doing Holiday and Anderson this year, and that was a substantial hit to our road program budget. So believe me, I don't like a tax increase any more than anybody does. I don't want to spend money on things that are pie in the sky. I'm just saying, I think when you start cutting it down to the wire, so we have all this budgeted, and we had it budgeted last year. And when Holiday and Anderson came around, it was the first thing to go. There were other roads. Carroll was to be done this year. Ramey was to be done this year. Pocono, they all got pushed aside. So what I'm saying is you have to be careful because that can happen and you're pushing things. We've already pushed all these roads aside. These are carryovers from last year. So if you further reduce that budget and then you have bad things happen, or, the water company comes through and they do another Arla Drive project, where are we going to be? So I'm just saying, again, this will always be at council's discretion. These are recommendations. These are things that are on our radar that we think you need to consider. Okay.
So how I interpret that is a way that I'm kind of wrapping my head around it is it's good for us to have this amount of money budgeted for our roads. In the event, and we've seen it, right? This year was the exact example of what can happen. And that's after like a okay winter. This was not like the worst winter we've had in the last couple of years. that it's good that we don't necessarily want to eliminate 1 and 2 immediately. Because we don't want to take that money from this budget. And then the instance that we do have to handle other streets that aren't even on here. It's good to just kind of have that cushion, because I will agree, I don't necessarily think that our first and second priority should be a park, for sure, like agreed. And I do think we've seen it, like we saw the road fund just become obliterated in a matter of weeks, essentially. Is that a good representation of what I'm hearing?
Generally, that's how I advise clients. Kind of get a sense of what your investment should be, not necessarily set the exact scope of work. Kind of target an investment, adopt a budget and see how the winter goes and take a look at your higher priorities. Again, there may be items that aren't even on this list that surface in January and February. And I think you were spot on from the perspective, it was a mild winter. And, we did get that cold snap that a lot of the mild winter and a lot of the rainy weather really heaved some of our roadways that became a safety related aspect of things. That surface.
Yeah, and when I hear that, like I want our roads to be safe. And I mean, I live on one of these roads that was bumped last year. And it should have been bumped because of the other things that happened. And my road is a complete mess and it does need to be fixed at some point. At the same time, I also I agree that I don't believe that our park should be the first thing there. And I am a little grateful that they're in there because I don't want to get to a point where we have something terrible happens in the winter, and then all of a sudden, those parking lots require a significant amount of our budget for this to even make the parks usable. I mean, lots of things happen in Green Tree Park throughout our summer. I would hate to get to a point where, oh crap, now we can't do a bunch of roads because we didn't factor this in. And now it's like too late to do that. I don't know. I agree they should, I don't want to do them before we do roads, but that's not what we're making decisions for.
No, and
Can you explain the rationale as to why the program and not in a different expense category?
One of the things that we had discussed is in terms of paving, and there is an economy of scale. And when we were budgeting and considering pavement improvements, you do get a better price if you're accommodating, if you got large parks like we do, and taking advantage of that economy of scale.
I think it's more of a question for Judy, wouldn't this be like wouldn't this fall under capital parking improvement? More so than a road program?
I think I think it's here because we were planning on doing it as a part of the road program. That's the only reason. And I will say, at least from my perspective, this list, at least in my mind, was not a priority. Just because the parks are 1 and 2, that was in no way, they were just up there because they were carried from last year. I would not.
Yeah.
Make that clear though.
Yeah. Yeah, we could for sure, we can move them for the final adopted budget. We could either put a statement, this is not a priority list, this is just a list of identified.
I like one carrying over from.
They all are.
previous year.
Right, almost all of them carried over.
They probably are because of what happened.
Maybe,
Sheldon was put off because of the water.
exactly, yeah.
Yes.
And that water
Yeah.
line's gonna happen this year, we're gonna start that early December, so 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be done by Casper Coliseum of the water line.
And I think we've been pretty good about shifting the priority, right? Because a lot of those roads were in for this year and the parks, and we recognize that Holiday and Anderson services all of our businesses up there, and the road was in pretty bad shape, so we should, that wasn't even on our radar, Holiday and Anderson. But it became so bad, it had to be pulled up, so, yeah, and again, that's all stuff that runs through infrastructure committee, it all goes to council. You have the ultimate decision to make as to what we do, so.
So just to clarify, because I kind of get where Dave's coming from this, I understand. They're not roads, the reason you're including them is partially because you would put them into a collective bid because it would be the same contractor using materials and the large quantity of material would give us a better rate. That is the objective. So it's not that they're the roads, it's that because of the bidding process, this gives us potentially our best bang for our buck if we're going to do that.
Well,
And both land and capital, so wouldn't like they would be in a different.
And then could they be, and this is the question, a add-on optional in a bidding process instead of
course.
part of the initial bid?
I think they always are.
yes. Yes, they could be at all.
So assuming a paving budget of 750,000, so I need to understand that, so total amount is 1.3 million. Assuming a paving budget of 750, and then we're budgeting $1 million, so.
Yeah, and I'll be candid with you, Dave, when we're preparing the budget memo, it's simultaneous with Judy and Babette and the rest of administration putting the document together, and I just utilized the value of what we budgeted in the past of 750 to estimate what the soft costs would be. And then however the budget shakes out, that's just my assumption that we were.
That's where it was.
That's last year.
Yep, and that is where it was last year, but clearly we were up at closer to $1 million this year.
Okay, so if we're estimating it's gonna cost 1.3 million to do all of this, how do we account for the other 300?
We wouldn't do it.
What wouldn't we do?
We would pick and choose when the time comes. Again, some of these roads may come off of here completely
Because of utilities.
because of utilities. We already know Sheldon, again, that's starting next month. We already know that's a given. But if other things happen, or if, say, a road just takes a hit from a weather perspective, like Holiday and Anderson did this year, we would choose that road over top of it, just like we did Holiday and Anderson this year. They weren't even, I don't even think they were on the 5-year plan.
No, they weren't.
But so it happened. And that's why I'm saying and certainly again, it council's discretion 100%, but I think if you just earmark $1 million, it gives you that budget to work with. If you can come in lower, excellent. If we get a great winner, and then we say we also want to defer the park projects, that gives you that money in the budget, maybe to spend on something else or whatever. I just think it's better to budget safe than sorry.
Jason, are there other options of paving for the parks?
Yeah, you could do a double seal coat or do something that's less expensive, that doesn't have the life. And then potentially, line stripe on top of those. And I remember seeing a picture of one of the parking lots. I think that's wasn't that seal fit for the fire chip?
Right. So
Wasn't one of
an option for, could that be an option for the parks?
It could be. It's obviously cheaper.
You have to look at the
So-
condition of it.
If, depending on the condition of it, it might just be putting a Band-Aid on it, if you will. Again, tar and chip is what PennDOT calls a double seal coat. It's a sealing coat. It doesn't add a lot of structure to it. But that could be one option, yes. We wanted to, scale back on the stuff.
That is.
Well, we've done the chip like the roadway going down to Leaf Pond.
Yeah.
And that road's held up great.
Yeah.
There's areas over the park that we'd have to do some spot repairs. and then shop and ship over top of that. The only concern with shop and ship is like when you get on Mansfield, that road's rough. And with the walkers and bicycles and stuff over there, keep falling, so you're breaking your leg, that's rough. But I think if you did some spot repairs, sealed it, and then striped it over, probably feel very different up with it.
And then, this is sort of related, but we've been waiting on that analysis of engineering costs for all of them. Jason, you noted here 60,000. Is that typically a percentage of the budget?
It's, typically about what we've, seen in our road program budgets. Our contract with you is a per diem contract, meaning, time and materials. In a road program scope of about 750,000 to $1 million, that's ballpark, what the engineering cost would be. Some of, other firms bill, their municipalities a lump sum based on a design cost, so in $1 million road program, for the design, they would bill their client $100,000, and then anything during construction would be over and above that. So that's, what we've seen, in Green Tree in terms of that scope with the work into the budget.
All right, any other questions on the road program? Okay, so turning to page 16. So obviously we have expenses associated with pool reconstruction, the pool bathhouse reconstruction. All of those are happening if they happen, right? So we go out to bid and we have competitive pricing comes in and council's comfortable with moving forward. We've earmarked these funds. Now, when you see the 500,000 and the 115 at the top of the page on 16, those are reflective of spending grant revenues that came in. So you'll see them up in revenue and then you'll see them again down in expenses, same amounts. I think that 115 is separated into two different amounts of, oh no, it's both, it's in there. Page 16.
There's a typo in the page number.
There is? Oh, there's two 16s. My apologies.
Yeah, the first one or the second?
We'll go to the second one. Page 16 too. Apologies for that. Yeah, so just looking at those expenditures, those are merely a reflection of spending the revenues that have been not received, but have been approved up above. Same with the DCE multimodal grant. That grant is in addition to the TIP funding. And then I show just spending of TIP funds of 550 because we programmed them to come in. CDBG ramp improvements, curb ramps, those are budgeted out at 31.6 and there's 27,000 revenue coming in on those. The blight removal grant, that's remaining. That was one from Char West. We're still working on getting one of the remaining projects demoed. Hopefully we'll get that done next year without a doubt. Contracted work is just some general things like tree cutting, miscellaneous type work. And then park improvements. Park Edge Park has some things that need to be done. That will be our primary focus for this year. Depending on whether or not we get some grant revenue, will determine how far we take the improvements in that park. Backing up, because I stepped over it, was let's see, which number is that? The 454-155, the DCED multimodal grant. And we have a map.
Oh, you want the map?
Yeah. here's the
Page
map.
79.
Yeah. So we have a map. So this year, those projects, the project that's being completed on Green Tree Road is phase 3, which we received a grant for that. And then shortly after that was awarded, we applied for another grant. That was also awarded, so that will be completed in the spring of 2026. And there's a summary of that in the budget. There's a fold out map. That is. Right, give you a page reference. There's a lot of exhibits. It's following the road program exhibits. So if you flip through, you'll see a sidewalk improvements budgeting memo, and then there are 2 maps. I recommend going to the second map because that highlights what will be done in 2026. Yes. Yes, so if you go to the second one, that has the purple bubble on it showing phase 4 work area. Jace, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. In terms of the sidewalk master plan, you know, little by little, as with the strategy of minimizing our local match or our local contributions to the general fund or bond fund, utilizing grant funds as much as we can. Yellow areas are completed sidewalks. Phase 2 is actually over on Manfield Avenue, and then phase 3, which is red, is finishing right now. Phase 4, in which we got a grant funded for, is in purple. And right now, the plans are ready to go on that. They've been submitted to PennDOT to get the highway occupancy permit. And as Judy mentioned, for bid early this spring. The blue areas are phase 5. Those are areas that we've applied to PennDOT's multimodal program that we'll hear in the spring to see if they'll be funded in 2027. So this gives you a kind of a sense that what's scheduled in 2026 is phase 4, 2025, that's the red area. And then the map beforehand shows, you know, grant applications extending out to 2027. And one of the other notes that also kind of falls under the grant application, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, council approved a resolution associated with community development block grants. That funding is primarily related to ADA improvements and we're replacing the detectable warning services along Green Tree Road. This grant cycle, all of those will be replaced, so we're looking at different sources on areas of need in the borough where those handicap ramps could be replaced. That next area is Nobletown Road. Get out of Poplar on that commercial corridor. Those would be eligible for grant funding there as well. So that's part of the strategy to, you know, identify long-term financing, primarily grant funding, minimizing our spend from our general fund, bond fund, and our local funds.
For this, the state 2026 grant application we're offering,
Yes.
is that gonna be affected by the proposed 376 project? Like, would that be destroyed for them to then have to, like, would they be responsible for fixing it, or would that be?
You mean the parkway improvements?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's well beyond the completed work in phase 1.
because the grant cycle is 27, but that wouldn't even be awarded until 28. But that grant cycle wouldn't even be awarded or put out today as possible. It's my hand, yeah. Great, that was actually, can I put that better? Yeah.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions about any other expenses in capital? Yes.
Why has he been so?
We talked beforehand a little bit, so he knows what's going on. Although we are on the 2-hour mark, so we might have put him to sleep. Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions on the capital fund, that was the last big spending of the funds. The remaining funds are really just, oh yeah? Or do,
Did we cover the fire company equipment?
we're gonna get there? We're gonna get there. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. We can. They have their own supplement there. So one of the transfers, so for the last couple of years, we have transferred $100,000 to the fire apparatus fund. Through the course of, I know last year at ALOM, in particular, there was a presentation about fire equipment and how incredibly expensive it's becoming. And we met with Chief Gott, and it is in fact, I think initially we were talking about putting $100,000 a year away for the next 7-8 years, because we expected that the new area would be about $1 million. And it's more than likely, Dawn, correct me if I'm wrong, going to be at least 2 million, maybe more. So we upped it by 50,000, and that's something that council can take a look at every year to determine how much we want to keep dropping into that fund to try to prepare for, 7, 8, 9 years down the road for that replacement. So that's why that went up by 50,000. And Dawn can certainly address that when we get down to the fire
Like
apparatus.
40,000 we had budgeted this year, it's showing a 0 spent. Is that?
Where are you? What
On the
page?
previous page.
What are the numbers? Oh, Dawn, I'm not sure I can't remember what that was offhand.
Carryover, planning on.
Yeah, probably. Okay, so the good news is we didn't have to spend it. Oh, right. We didn't take it away. If it's not in there, it's because he indicated he didn't need it.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe rather than switch,
Yeah, we'll just go back to that, but I just want to make sure that, it appears here that it's not a budget, then we took it away.
so what I would suggest, maybe just to jump ahead of these next couple funds real quick, just to go, since we're in capital now, just to stop back to under the blue tab, the 5-year capital plan. So 2026 is just 2026 that's in the actual capital budget. And then you can see that, we're forecasting out some things for 27, 28, 29, 2030. But if you go back to, as I know that with Acting Chief Brannigan here, if there were any questions on his $128,000 in expenses, when you go through just behind the spreadsheet, you go to page 3 back there. It lists those expenditures associated with that $128,500, starting with in-car cameras. So I'm gonna take this down here.
Jump me roll through them real quick, or do you guys have specific questions about your own? Did you? Okay. First one is probably the top priority, the in-car camera system, which is separate from our body camera. They work simultaneously, but they're 2 different systems. I was actually alerted several months ago that the system we have is now
It's been long serviceable, which has been in service for a very long time. It's a very reliable system. Being that Motorola was aware of that, and this is why it's somewhat of a priority, is servicing will be an issue. We are having breakdowns with one of the cars. It's still functional, but we just have to keep messing with it. There's a 40% discount for the order this year. So if we put the order in now, we don't have to accept delivery, but that's one of the reasons why I have pressed that is, yes, it is expensive, but you can take that 26,000. That if we decide, push that down the road, but they're.
Pay for it this year?
No, it would be built next year, so that's.
2026, that's what we would be getting.
Yeah, you just have to place the order, I can show that by, would have to talk to you, know, it's not a problem, do that all. The next one, this is another issue that we've been dealing with for, quite honestly, almost my entire career. Our policy and procedure manual is, it's a mess, I'll be honest. The two most important sections are up to date there, they'll be functional, which policies, suits, and use of force, which I always say, those are the two policies that get you in or out of trouble. The other ones are important, but not nearly as important as those two. So we're fine with what they are, it's been working, we're fine. Don't get you sued if we're being more policy doesn't want to speak. However, everything needs to be reviewed and done. Flexible as a system used to have, wasn't utilized, but it's a more expensive with that system. That is the go-to system that just about everybody uses, all departments use, and it's a nationwide policy. I think they service 10,000 departments or something. I can't remember the number of departments, but they did pass that, but they provide service to many departments. So they do all basically like ticket things up to date, things that are already going through the channels. So there's an initial startup fee, but then there's an annual cost every year of $9,000. My goal would be to set a deadline for myself to get that redone from A to Z on spot checking sections that are easy to do. Start with A, get to Z, so that we have a functioning policy. And also, other thing is, it's all accessible online. So there's no problem flipping through pages trying to find that one section that has that section that we needed to find out about this particular time. So that's that.
That is, the district attorney approves that.
Oh, sure, yeah. Like I said, well, the district attorneys, like the sections that would be controversial, say, or legally issues, they're already addressed. So yes, we would stay with what we have as far as those. We don't have to use what they quite honestly, what you have to do. I didn't really get to do the function part of the Lexipol, but I did talk to the representative. They kind of give you a tutorial. So what you do is you take those procedures, you basically make it work for your part, whatever that would be. And use of force, and then more so than pursuit, was written by the district attorney's office. We accepted, we're not changing. You know, that would be foolish for us to go outside of his recommendation. The other use of force, it's up to speed, unless the DA would come down, some sweeping changes or something. I would suggest making any changes, unless there was something. We are adding a less lethal option here very shortly. That would be something included in that section, but again, I'll get to it. It's an important part of what we do, and really needs to be addressed. It hasn't been addressed in a very long time. Next one's the big man. That's the Taser 10. The tasers that we're currently carrying are over 10 years old. Tasers have become the central part of this business. I don't know the department that doesn't use them. And as far as less lethal options, it's something we carry all the time, it's something we need. So the OC spray, I'm not a fan of, I don't carry it with me because it really impacts me more than it does anybody that I'm going to use it against. I have it in my bag just in case. But this is the primary less lethal option. The Taser 10, one of the problems that I have, tax on them, is the provider. They're the only game for them. We really can't set, I see the price, I know the price, I think it's ridiculous. What is giving you the most updated version, and there's, which I'd be happy to talk to you about, but I won't unless you ask me why. Many upgrades to it, as far as distance, as far as the number of
rounds that you can fire, the data that you can collect, there's a virtual reality training program that's included in that price. There's a 5-year warranty. I checked and Judy asked, if we were going over this, what's the lifespan of the pager? So I did ask the question. I said 5 years. Argentine. So, of course, just like a car dealer, how long can I get out of this car? As long as I can get you to buy a new one. So of course, I would expect much longer, and I know that people are carrying tasers that are much older than ours, but it's a matter of maintenance and keeping up speed. We only have 2 rounds with this, we only have 2 shots with this, and I could go with the details on how they work, function, if you want, but I won't prolong this.
Jack, how frequently has the department deployed tasers? Like a month?
Yeah, it would be more of an annual basis, so I'm going to take, so I can say this much, and I don't have the exact numbers to tell you, because it will fluctuate, because in my business, it usually comes with pay. But we don't have any sort of incident, so, what happens, that, I personally, I know I have most, I've had about 8 in my career, 7 or 8, so that's over the course of over 10 years. So it's not that routine. I don't think we've had one this year. I don't think we've had a single taser deployment this year. And that's an array of factors.
Please go on wood, yeah, not these two.
This, you know what, just like a lot of the equipment we buy, we don't have practices.
Right, I mean, I think this is your least lethal option, and it gives you that confidence in your going out.
Yeah.
If I'm being a salesperson here, selling to you guys on why we should get from this 65,000 is a hell of a price tag. One lawsuit before we even get to the court, right? We don't have them, we have to have them. And now these are still functioning, but they're the oldest model, and it's, I don't know exactly when, but when I was referred to, or talking to the representative, and 2 representatives to the other, basically this is going to take up, so we'll be back at the sort of the issue. They're really pushing these taser 10s, and they are up to a couple of different chiefs that have them, and even with the price tag, I asked them some more of it, and we both agreed to it. And they have higher price tags than they're. The next one is the upgraded fob system. We have the key fobs, if you don't know, and we have 2 doors. The system is so antiquated. I got about the speed, it was last year, so I was able to basically band-aid this together through the help of Jim Neely. Basically, what I'm doing now is I'm borrowing the old computer because the system's so outdated that it won't work off all operating systems. So I have a computer just for the sole purpose, not to anything else but the fob system, because it has such a old operating system that it'll operate the doors. Now, fortunately, I don't have to access that very often, but to put in new keys or it's continual key or some breaks a key, which happens, or a fob, I should say, not a key, then I have to get in there and basically it's a very complicated system, but it's expensive. So I did get some prices, and they're a little bit older. I attempted to adjust it. I would add 1 door to the fob system, which already has a mechanical lock on it. So that's part of the cost I would say. But you basically, I just have to update the hardware out to get the new updated system. I don't even remember when that was put in, but it's probably been maybe longer than that. I really, you know what? Probably close to 20 years since that box system's been installed, and it's really outdated. Next one, I think we can get it done cheaper, but I don't know. We have a couple very small monitors, both 28 screens downstairs. We have on 2 separate walls, and this really covers just basically our holding cells and our interrogation and interview. That's all the cameras that we have. We also log them in so that we do cameras in parks, out in the parking lot, those types of things. But they are very small. So even from my desk, the view is very tough, and especially on poles. So my plan or my idea is to put approximately 8 monitors on the wall. One of the big features would be our CAD system, which is the dispatch, all the calls on the screen.
So that if, for instance, I'm in the station, I can look up, I can see what calls, see who's there, see what's going on. If somebody calls out a traffic stop, we do most of what we do now, right on. So that I can call out, I can call out a traffic stop, I can call out a parking lot, just to check. There's a list of calls that I can just go do, so I stay off the radio. We have a very crowded channel. So that would be one of the plans would be to have that, so that if an officer is in the station, they're looking, not only can we have a large view of the cells, we'll have multiple other views of the parks. So if we happen to be in the station, you see headlights down Town Park right now. That's someone should probably go look at it, see what they're doing. Maybe it's kids, nobody else. But it gives us that, most importantly, would be the CAD system. And a lot of, most of the departments I know already have that, so that will be the upgrade. And the last one,
I'm sorry, so the car cameras, body cam. Do they have a live feed at all?
no, you can, there is some ways to do it. I basically just lied. Yes, there is a way to do it, but I don't know. You can live feed, and the only reason I know that is because there were tools that would just pop into the cameras to see where the cars are, stuff, but I, that never found that, nor would I do that on boards, but I do believe you can do a live feed, you know, without even if not, anybody with that, typically, would get in, happen, that, yeah, they would have. So I want to pull that out, maybe you're asking, should I pull that out and see the sort of traffic stop?
No, not that kind of like, hey, there's, and now we have eyes on it, like you're responding. Right, you can see what's happening.
That was, I would look into that, see if I can, because I would have to get that on phone or on a car computer. Yeah, but, the primary purpose of this would be, for what I said, we just do that. And it is relatively minor, especially because of 50-inch TVs and films that take make lots of it. Yeah, so it's just getting that installed, as I would, we do, you know, it's not a big deal. Last one is suppressor, if you're not familiar with suppressors. Silencer, that's what they're called. They're just called suppressors now. It's not like a movie, you know, not that there's for thing. With my, so it's another one firing range. If you've never shot a gun, especially a high powered rifle, they're incredibly loud. And they will cause you damage within one shot if it's close to you. Sending the guys into situations where they have fire rifles indoors, now inside. Everybody who's been playing times has got caught with their ear protection to the side for a second. Because they're back at the table doing something, so it cracks on the ground, catching your attention real fast. So basically, this would cut the dust down, not to whisper quiet, but to the point where you're not going to go down from the front end shots. I've had some experience with suppressors, and it's incredibly reduced. On this high powered rifle, the AR-15s of the carrier, it would be a significant reduction, but still loud. I mean, you're not definitely hear it. As far as recoil on ARs, there's not to be, what is cross wrong? That's good. I don't really know, it might. However, I don't know, the AR-15 is a great platform, that's the preferred gun everybody uses, because of the low recoil, the accuracy, really look at the shots where you want them. Yeah. But that's the concern, that's been on the list for a while, that is a wish item, but I do think we're giving $500 to give us all 5 guns, all 5 rifles that we had. So,
This, standard issue of most recent at this point.
no, actually, I don't even know, I don't know any departments that have the officer would do. So this would be something that, I've talked with Kevin, they can be taken over the firearms and Frank too, and they're the proponents of it. But I think because just what I said is more wish list item, but I do see it some, because I assure you, especially with all these great shooting and loud music that I saw paid for all those years. I don't know if there's any, I really don't, I already to the point where I have to keep going on, but I don't want to do that, so I can see the incident. I don't want anybody to get into that incident, but I also don't want to have to come back and say, well, you survived, but not. You're like, "No, sorry.
Is there a point where there has to be a point where hearing loss then affects a cop's ability to do the job, right?
Sorry. Yes, it would be, if you did, that would get this. So again, I would go back to what I said, you know, that, you look at it, $5,500 versus permanent disability for an officer. And that's the key thing, I just don't want, I don't want it, and I certainly don't want anybody, and then especially yours. If the range is controlled, all fires down range. You're in a high tense situation, I start shooting that gun and I'm next to somebody, they're done. You know, it's not gonna change. Now, we survived, I'm not gonna cry about it if I'm still alive at the end of it. But just so you understand it, they're deaf, they don't hear it, or that's why, so that's it. Any questions?
What about the drones? Is that something I know you explored out with?
It's a work in progress. I have some. I just want to. Talking about playing with the disseminate, not have our policy, fire department, police department policy. Integrate. So
Can you have this, can you share the equipment?
Correct, yes. And it'd probably be for us, like, for helping them, they don't want to free up the gap, you know what I mean? They'd rather have their guys there, have us, we will be at the single, some fire station. Somebody with a van.
So is that something that, I mean, it's not in this year's budget, but is that something?
We have a problem. The fire department has their, we want to go with this year, if you look at the, general fund, there's been an increase in the, training budget. And one of my, I have multiple training, because as of this month, the fund basically up to speed. We have a whole lot of officers, probation, and it's working functionally. So now it's time to start specializing in training. So what I would really like to do, and of course it takes a long time to proceed with the training, is to get officer not only up to date on drones, but also crashes and firearm instructor, things like that. So that is the mix for certain. And I would like to start with one, but I'd like to get 2 drone pilots in our department. And then also, hold on, we've also talked about that, where we could give, if we get 2 in each department, we got some serious coverage as far as the best part about the drone is the immediacy of the price, if it's available. And right now, there are numerous communities have them, we're operating them. Shaycog is running a drone team, and I think there's 35 members on the team right now. So the availability is growing, but also the need is growing. There's more deployments every single day. And they're using them for everything from missing children, suspects, all the way up to rescues, everything. Search warrants, you name it, we're putting them in the air. I think you've been through the story.
Sorry. Through Shaycon for this, is that something that's coming down?
No, the Shaycog community, they all have shared uses, so typically we've not participated in a lot of those other than taking the resources. So I would really like to get us up to speed. Even after another draft team,
Which think that's more support.
Part of the same crash. They have an incredible crash team right now. Incredible. They are second to none in the state as far as having this team come out and respond to serious and fatal accidents. But we really need to get somebody up to speed, because we're relying on us. So if it's just a fatal crash, charge should be filed, we're the file agent. You will file those charges, otherwise it's homicide. As a crash, three crashes in 1 time. I think Shaycog right now has 4. So it's a big step, big pat on their back. There's the same for drug. I like to get us involved, participating with it. We're fully funding.
Which if you're helping my presentation next month with why we should join Shaycon. Come out of Charlotte.
We're in that plus. There's a big head in this plus.
No, I know, and that's part of my presentation. I'm just saying, thank you for reinforcing.
Those are the 2 teams that are being on to try to, well, there's crash
force that I was like I said, perfect for the opportunity. And I would have two officers that are showing much interest in it's getting these classes, pilot classes, what I want to play all stuff, sport levels, you gotta train, you gotta do stuff, but it is on the horizon. And I mean, honestly, give up with times, you really have to get involved with this too important piece of equipment that we just can't let it sit there and wait for other things to happen.
Okay, so I think maybe,
This was Ed Shank, can I?
yeah, you know what, Ed, hold on one second. Let me get you over, see if I can pick you up.
Look, Mayor. Hi, Mayor.
Hi,
Go ahead.
like, just 4 points, on different areas. Just, say all at once here. Those 6 areas that, Chief Brannigan for the 128,500. I've discussed all those with him. He explained them well. So I'm fully in support of that 128,500. I think it would be well spent for those 6 areas. Number 2 point that I had, and it increased the library funding from 60% to 75%. I think that'd be well worth the money. I just proofread the newsletter today. And the library has so many different activities. It's amazing. So I think that the extra 56,000, the increase from 60% to 75 would be well spent. MERSA, I noticed this year's 31,000 or allocation. It looks like it's even down a couple $1,000, but in any event, 31,000 to have that ambulance service is an excellent buy for the borough and the other municipalities participate. I always get a household member to support them. But anyhow, that's a good organization. 131,000 well spent. The 4th thing would be in regard to the millage increase to 0.5. I'm still having a little bit of problem with that. I understand that the bond service is going to have to pay $400,000 out of the general fund coming up in 2027, but then nevertheless our reserves are higher than the recommendation. I mean, it's always good to have more, but the minimum recommendation we're higher than. So if we took that 276,000 out of our reserves, we'd still be at the recommended. So I'm not fully decided on that, but I know it could be a rainy day, 2027, but other things could happen for the positive. So anyhow, that was just my thought on the subject. But thank you. For the rest.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Okay, so I think at this point it would be, all of the other funds are really pretty self-explanatory. They're just funds where money is essentially required to be part. The drug enforcement fund can't do anything with that. The pension proceeds fund, nothing can be done with that. Those are all restricted funds. The bond fund, obviously, we know what that is. So I was gonna say, if we want, maybe we could just turn it over to Don, so he could just, address council with what he wants to, and then we can wrap up this meeting too.
Yeah, Dave, you're asking about that 40,000 was in there, it's paid for that. Last year for the new emergency hall thing in there, AFFF, the fund flower for it, that's very cancer. And it's gonna be automatic. Fund out, it's, taken care of before it became issue as I had that. The new president got in there, pretty much extended it, saying, no, or extend that, it's too much for firefighters, now to get rid of that. So it's not considered a hazardous area, but we don't want it to get there yet, we want to get it rid of it. This is very cancer causing people.
You said it's not considered.
It's not right now, it's not as a hazardous condition, like a hazardous to your hazmat or that's what they want to put it in as.
Yeah.
They kind of held off on that right now until they figure stuff out. A lot of companies got rid of it already, they went to a different, it's fluorine in it.
I just want to be very clear about which president you're talking about. Not me, not the.
No, it's the government, federal government,
Yeah.
federal government say no, and that's nothing to do with you. No. You probably don't, AFFF, it's last day we call it, fluorine in it, it's very cancer causing, no studies to it.
It's just bad stuff. Carried in 3 engines over there, up there, stuff. It does a great job. Fortunately, times and all that, it's been proven to do that. That was what that 40,000. So that's what you were asking about. I asked her to keep that in there. I think that was just a tough, difficult there, trying to get some quotes to see what we can do, say the flusher and all that, if they have something. What they do with it, third world countries, I don't know. I think we'll.
You have to wait until somebody says, this has that, but now, besides that, is that.
Oh, it's bad.
Who is the department?
We will get rid of it.
Get rid of it.
We want to get rid of it. Everybody's down that route. I mean, you have to do it. I mean,
Okay.
it's in the truck, yes, but we use on it, and it's actually for all liquid fires, tanker trucks and all that, but that part right now, that's why we carry so much, just so we have suppression on these rigs, it's 45 gallons. There's a percentage of that, it's just, it's like, so it's pretty much what it's doing. Suppresses the fire, tames it, pops it. Getting on that, last year we did most of our calls, we did the highest amount, over 300,000. I like the library, we're in the same boat as the police. 7 days, 24 hours, 365 days. My guys are all volunteer. It's rough on us. Running out the door, you know, everybody's child teams and all that, they run out. Even in like dinners and that, just. But I just see as far as service, I don't know what the answer is with attention and all that. Dave actually went through some training, kind of like a highlighter. I brought up these guys. I think it would open his eyes up a little bit, what we really do. And I mean, it's rough out there. They're getting back to the budget. Yeah, aerial is coming up. It's like 4-year build on that things. And probably by 30, 31. It's gonna be the need and replace, so we probably have to start by 27. It's probably gonna be over $2 million. I mean, they're jumping astronomical. I mean, with it 5 years ago, it was only $1.5 million. Now it's 2 million. Like, it's just the way it is. I mean, vehicles, I mean, Chad, I mean, this up to 40, money up to 80 almost. So, I mean, it's like 50% jump. It's amazing on that. Other than that, I mean, we don't have no capital needs right now. There's some updates in the building. We have some carpet on the walls, I think from 1968. We'd like to get rid of it, just kind of update them on some windows, just to give guys a new look, freshen up, maybe guys, you know, come around a little bit more, hang out. Our group of age, our median age is probably 40, if not plus. We don't really have young guys, that's what we like to try to keep. We did stuff years ago for them, we brought in PlayStations and that, and guys hung out, but then of course they got married. A lot of them stayed in the borough, which was nice. They're having kids now, but nobody really hangs if we're not committed to manning the station. It's kind of hard to. Other than that, I mean, if anybody have any questions on the fire department?
Yeah, Tony, thanks. I have a question about the fire apparatus fund. So the 941 that remains, does that include the money that we borrowed to pay for the new engine?
No, we paid for that. We borrowed money for that.
I know, it's the money that we borrowed, is that included in the 941?
That was
The
paid
one
out,
that's the engine that's currently being built.
that was paid out in 2020. That was, we only borrowed the deposit. Did you get it 302,000 in 2024?
Yeah. So that's the pump, that's the pump being built.
Yes. Yes.
Should it pay for it?
That's paid for, yeah. That part.
So the 941 is going towards the aerial.
Whatever we need to replace, that's where,
Whatever,
yes.
yeah.
The area would be the next one coming up. And typically, every 20 years, they want to NFPA standard. We're trying to push it to 30, save for some money. Every time I take it out, they're saying it's in good shape. I think, of course, it's costing a little money here and there. I don't know, like the hoses, a lot of hydraulic hoses on there. I don't know how they last. They dry rot. I don't know. I'm not a mechanic. I don't manufacture that stuff. But that's, I mean, pushing on the 30 years would be feasible, I think. I'm hoping, but then again, might be 3 months. I don't know. I can't answer that.
But like, say you're saying maybe in 5 years, we'll need to order or.
Oh, yeah, 27, because you think to start to
So,
build.
right, and we put a deposit, and then incrementally pay, and so that's.
Yes, that would be.
Price increase over that.
I don't know if it freezes it, I can't answer that one, because I don't know when they get to the next part.
Because
Yes. I mean, they can start and say, yeah, we'll freeze it here, but never know.
it's
Is that aluminum going up? Is that anything? Yeah, rubber products going up, or is there a freeze on this? They can't even make it. They don't do that, we gotta change it. We ran into that with
Yeah,
this
we
new.
just ran into that with things changing.
Unfortunately, yes, and that one's been, we tried that in 20, but then I got our 19, we actually started that one on the back burner. And then it came back up, so back then and now, big difference.
But that 150 that we're putting in, that's gonna help us. Yeah.
That's going into a pot,
Yeah.
so that's just building a fund.
Yep.
Which, last CD, only 50 of it, like, let's see, another 100, but 50 is better than nothing. So, but anything else?
All right, so again, the other funds are just kind of pass-through funds, so if council doesn't have any additional questions now, certainly any questions between now and December 1st, please email me and I will
I have
happy
one
to.
more, I mean, this
Sure.
is on record, I disagree with, the tax increase, I think, as the mayor said, we have reserve funds that, or you said this yourself, that they're well-funded, overfunded.
Yeah.
And I think we can tap into the liquid fuels tax or the healthcare,
Liquid fuels is restricted.
we can't use that to,
We use it for something, some maintenance issues, but it's not like you could spend it to do some MS4 projects.
what about the healthcare fund?
Healthcare fund, insurance dividend fund, and the reserve fund are all up for grabs. The real estate too, but when you have 42% large commercial real estate, I think you want to be careful.
I don't, you know. But I do appreciate the reasoning behind it.
Of course, yeah. And it's, yeah.
Your decision is ours. But I appreciate
Absolutely,
that.
for sure. And I guess it really just comes down when you look at those significant increases to debt service in 2027. And then I don't know where we'll land with 2028 with the refuse collection. So, but you also have other sources of revenue that you can collect, you can create. So that's an option as well.
So December 1st, when we vote on this, are we voting all in, or can somebody make a motion, say, I want this tax increase taken out, and then we vote on that? Or can it
If you would, if the council would make it have a consensus would say, we would like for the value of the tax increase to come out of reserves and not, then we could leave the budget as it is. Because the thing that's really important about a budget, just because it's in the budget, doesn't mean it has to be spent. It's a guide. It's what you expect to do. But you could say, we do not want to do a $0.5 tax increase. We would prefer for that money to come out of our reserves. We'll keep the rest of the budget the same, and that's fine.
I have a very hard time saying I want to increase any tax when we literally have no, like, the county being sued, of course, for real estate assessments. We have lots of people who, I mean, I talked about it last month. I heard earlier this month. I don't feel like I need to go into my reasoning why I'm not in favor of it. I'm pretty a solid no in raising taxes. When I'm talking to people on the daily who can't afford to keep heat on in their house, I'm not into increasing something. I think we would have to, my thought would be to take from reserve, and then begin 2027 or 2026 planning for what we would need in 2027.
So it sounds like we're kind of getting a trend here. I can redistribute the budget and just show you what it looks like without that tax increase. So how about if I will work on that tomorrow and get that out to you, just so you could see what how the funds, it's basically going to be reduced by that amount. And it would come out of probably the insurance dividend fund. Okay, all right, well, that's what I'll do tomorrow and I'll get that out to everybody. Thank you, and thanks to all the staff for enduring an almost 3-hour budget meeting. I appreciate your
Nice.
participation.